Hey everybody, Johnny here with Team Legit. Today I want to show you the build video for the Legit wing. First thing you want to do is grab your wing cores, determine which side is the right side up and upside down. The side which has a little more downward sweep is going to be the top. So what we're going to do first is we're going to start with our two wing beds. You want to make sure you get these glued together nice and flat. And you could just use a hot glue gun. So what I'm going to do here is just apply a little bit of hot glue to the actual wing beds. And this is going to be your starting point for building your aircraft. You want to make sure that you have a nice contoured surface so when you build your aircraft. So, oh, look who's coming up the driveway now. This is my best.
For you, no bills.
This is my best friend Omar, and I'm sure a lot of you guys have friends just like him.
Here's your toys.
Thanks, Omar.
Hey, thank you.
All right, have a good day, buddy.
All right.
So once you've got your wing bed glued down, now you have a nice solid surface to work with. So when you start building your aircraft, it's not going to be moving around, fluctuating for you. Okay, the next step of the build is going to be just a little bit of cleanup and tidying things up here. So once you notice the two wings we'll have these little residue from the hot wire cutter. So what I like to do is just take the two and rub them together and get all that residue off of there. So once you're satisfied with the residue off of the wing cores, next step seems kind of silly but works out great. You're going to take the top wing core, it's always a little bit thicker, and I just simply go through, find a nice spot, and cut out a little square. This actually has a little purpose. It does dual purpose. So what I do with this is I'll take my M77 or the adhesive spray a little bit on there, and put some sandpaper on there. This makes a perfect sanding block. So the top half actually doubles as a sanding block. The reason we have a sanding block is sometimes the edges aren't cut completely straight. So what I like to do is just go through and just lightly sand them. Don't run it this way because you're going to chip the foam up, and you don't want it to get chipped. So what I do is just simply take my, I believe this is 300 or 250 grit sandpaper. Just give it a light sand and get that airfoil nice and rounded in the front. And you'll notice with just a little bit of application, it'll actually round out pretty nice. So go ahead and do that for the bottom and the top on both wing halves. So after you've gone through and rounded off the edges, and it gives it a nice soft round edge, go ahead and take your hot glue gun. Now you could use hot glue or you could use Amazing Goop. Either one works just as good. I'm going to use hot glue for this video just for the sake of making it a rapid video. So go ahead and make sure the hot glue gun is nice and warm. That way it'll seep into all the little pores. So you want to get all the edges and all the contact points pretty solid. And then you're going to just go ahead and press your two pieces together. And like I said, hot glue or Amazing Goop works great. I usually like to use hot glue just for a quick assembly if I'm in a rush or whatnot. But a lot of times what I'll do is I'll get it all hot glued up and then I'll go over the seams with Amazing Goop, and it gives it a nice seamless finish. So now I've got my two wing halves nicely joined together. I'll apply a little bit of pressure while this hot glue dries. And look who we got walking up the driveway today. Seems like we're getting quite a bit of visitors today. Got my buddy Paul there. Hey Paul, how's it going, buddy?
Johnny, what are you making?
Oh, we're doing the Legit wing today. You're gonna love this little wing. It's a nice little FPV flying wing.
Oh, really?
Yeah, pretty neat little wing. So anyways, we got Paul here, so we'll move on to the next step. All right, on to the next section of the build. We're going to be installing our carbon fiber rods. What I've done is glued the top wing bed just like I did with the bottom wing bed. Got my little hole right there for where we cut out our sanding block. So what I'm going to do is take my bottom wing bed out, take my wing, flip it over upside down. Get the camera pointed on what we're working on. All right, so we've got our bottom half of the wing bed. As you can see, I've already scored these lines. What you're going to do is you're going to take your motor mount, you're going to line it up to right about where it's going to go. Give yourself about 1/4 of an inch above the motor mount, and then take your ruler. I've already went ahead and marked it with my pen. So you take your ruler, line up the ruler nice and flush with both ends. Go ahead and give yourself a line. I got my blade here, and what I did is I went ahead already and just gently scored this. I went in about 1/4 of an inch deep. You don't need to go very deep in this. So you've scored this all the way across here. Take your carbon fiber spar, and I find it works the best when sticking it in on the one side and just kind of wiggling it down and all the way through. So you'll want to do is go ahead and install your carbon fiber spar. Make sure you do a nice dry fit. Make sure it's nice and straight. So I've got mine in there. It looks pretty good. Looks pretty straight. Then you're going to do your top spar. Your top spar makes it look kind of like a bow and an arrow. So what I've done here is the easiest way to do this is if you have somebody maybe can help you out. But what I usually do is I'll put a little score right here. I'll stick my carbon fiber spar in there, and then I'll go ahead and mark it on the other side. Kind of score it in there. Make sure you don't cut your fingers off. And then now you kind of have them held in place, and you can take your pen, score your bow. It does not need to be perfect because this thing has a little bit of flexibility to it. As long as you kind of follow the general outline of where your bow is going to go, you can get this carbon fiber spar in there. I've actually been doing pretty good with these, just doing them by hand, just kind of figuring out where my top's going to go. Get my carbon fiber spar dry fitted in there. So yeah, that's pretty good right there. I've got it. As you can see, it's a little imperfection right there, but that's not going to hurt anything. It's not going to make the plane fly one way or the other. But so we've got our carbon fiber spars. What I'm going to do here is go ahead and get the amazing goop and put a bead of it across here, and then put my carbon fiber spars down on it. Actually, it'll go like this with a bead of amazing goop. And with the goop, it kind of adds a little bit of lubricant for a split moment there, and you can work your carbon fiber spars in there. So let me get these spars gooped in, and we'll move on to the next step. So once you get your carbon fiber rods dry fitted into the slots, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and turn it back over top side. And at this point is what we're going to do is go ahead and place all of our equipment. So we're going to say, we're going to basically designate where everything is going to go. You're going to have your GoPro box. I don't cut this out till towards the end. That way I can fine tune the CG if I need to. I'm going to have my LiPo. In this case, I'm going to be running a 2450 4-cell with my motor here. So I want to put my battery bay right about here. So what I'll do is go ahead and mark that. Just a quick note, the CG is about 4 3/4 to about 5 inches from the blunt nose. So it's going to go from here about 5 inches back. And I went ahead and I've marked my CG here. So I'm going to center my battery. I'm going to cut it. I'm going to just kind of draw out right around where I want to place my battery. I have flown this wing with a 3000 4S, and that was actually a mistake, but it took it no problem. The reason is when we were originally getting the aircraft figured out, I didn't know where the CG was, so I was adding weight to the nose. And then I finally ended up just cutting out a bigger bay for the 4000. I'm sorry, for the 3000. So my battery's going to go here. Originally, we also had placed our FPV equipment too far back the CG, so it actually threw it off quite a bit. So this time I'm going to place things a little bit more forward. Remember, when you put your GoPro box, your dedicated FPV camera is going to go on the left side if you're facing the wing forward. From that view would be the right side. So what I do is I always put my FPV transmitter on the left side. That way there's less wires and you don't have things crossing over. I'm probably going to be running a 1.3, but for now I'm going to cut out my bay for a 5.8 gigahertz. So just kind of mark where everything's going to go, and that way you have a better idea of placement. My receiver is about the same size. I'm going to be running the Dragon Link, and I'll go ahead and put that right about here. So now I've got my video transmitter, my receiver, my battery, and now let's go ahead and mark the location for my ESC. The ESC you don't really have to mark much. What I do with the ESC is when I mount my motor here, I'll run my wires up to it. I'll mount my motor back here like so. I usually put the ESC, it doesn't weigh much, but I usually put that behind the CG just to give it a little bit of tail weight so I can add more equipment like your camera and your GoPro up on the nose. So my ESC will go right about here. And I usually run my ESC topside. I don't really cut out a slot for it. One thing that I really like about this build is when you put your motor mount in here, it'll be inside the wing. You'll have a little bit of space to zip tie over your ESC. So we've got our placement of this general equipment, and now we're going to do the servos. You may need servo extensions to go to your receiver. I usually will cut it and just solder something straight to another end instead of running extensions. I'll just cut it and solder an extension onto it. It's just less things that could go wrong. Your servos, I usually run these right about the CG and about I'd say 2.5 inches back from where the elevon is going to be, just so it gets it right there in the meat area. So let me grab some elevons and we'll show you where they're going to go. So I've got the elevons here, and I'm going to go ahead and just kind of dry fit them or just place them where I want to put them. So I'll run mine right here about to the edge of the wing. There is about 1/4 inch of slack, so I usually put them in just a little bit. So we got a mark there, and I'm going to mark my servos. The way I figure out where I'm going to put my servos, I usually line up my ruler right at the edge of the where the winglet would go, top corner. For my case, I'm going to run about 7 inches in, so I went ahead and marked that 7 inches in, about 7.5, and then I know my servo is going to go there. I'll usually kind of dry fit the first one, and then I'll measure off of this for the other side. So I know my servo is going to go about here. Then I'll go here to the same thing on the other side. Line up my ruler to the edge right there, and we're about 7.5 inches. I'm sorry, 7 inches in, which lines up to right about where I've already marked it. So 7 inches there. So then I'll take my other servo, just kind of trace where I'm going to drop that in there. So now you can go ahead and cut out all your bays. If you have other equipment, OSDs, things like that, you can cut out the bays. There's a couple ways to do this. One, you can dig out and hollow out the cavity for where you're going to do it, or you can do it the easy way. For lack of equipment right now, I left my blade somewhere else. You can cut completely through each one of the bays, so it will actually cut just completely through like this. So find the depth. Once you cut this out, find the depth of your equipment and then slice that block. So in this case, I'll use this for an example. So once this is cut out, let's say this is your battery bay, you're going to take your blade and just cut straight through the depth, and then you can glue the negative back into from the bottom. So that way you can just glue it in there and then have a little plate or a bracket or a space to put that equipment there. Okay, I just wanted to show you I've got all my bays cut out, and I've got everything just kind of mocked up right around where they're going to be. I don't have the GoPro box or the GoPro or the camera on here yet. I just kind of want to get a feel for where my CG's at. So motor's going to go back a little bit more, so it's going to add more tail weight. There's going to be laminate on here, which is going to add more tail weight. So you have to remember, any ounce of weight that goes in the back, it usually needs to be countered by 3 times that amount in the front. So I don't have my receiver on hand right now, so I'm just throwing something with equivalent weight right there. And if I balance my finger on the CG, you'll notice that it is just a bit tail heavy, which is okay because there's still going to be quite a bit of nose gear going on here with the GoPro and things like that. So let me get some of this stuff off and just kind of show you how I did the cutouts. So for my receiver, transmitter, and battery, what I did is went ahead and glued the negative back in. One thing I did want to mention is when you do your placement of things, do it on the bottom side, because I forgot to mention that your spar is going to come up over here. Usually my battery encompasses right over where the spar is going to go. So we talked about the spar and how it kind of bows in here. My battery will sit right here on the spar, so we'll add quite a bit of support to that. So another thing, don't glue this in until you have your battery and all your equipment placed in. So what I'm going to do now is go ahead and glue in my spars and then paint my wing. After I paint that, then I'll go ahead and glue in my spars, run all my channels of where everything's going to go. You could use the tip of the soldering gun to just kind of burrow them out, or you could just use your blade. I find the blade is a little bit cleaner, so if my servo is going to go here, I would just kind of do a little very, very shallow cut, and then you can actually tuck the wires right into the foam to give you a nice streamline finish. Remember, you're going to have to extend one or two of your servos depending on where you place them to get them to get to where they need to go. Also, keep in mind that your ESC wire is going to need to be channeled over to your receiver as well. So I'm going to get all my spars glued in. I'm going to get this thing ready. I'm going to go ahead and paint it, and then I'll show you
All right,
how
guys,
to
now I'm back with my wing, and I've got it all painted up, almost ready for laminate. There's a couple steps before we laminate it. So one thing I do want to mention, you can spray paint these with regular spray paint. You don't need any foam safe paint. You don't need anything crazy. Just regular spray paint. EPP is really durable. It will not chew up the EPP. What I usually do is if I want to come up with some cool lines and stuff, I'll just put masking tape on there, tape it down really nice, hit it with a coat of spray paint, and leave it at that. I decided to go with American flag color scheme on the bottom and silver. Actually, it's chrome spray paint with some black stripes on top. So real quick, before we go ahead and laminate, I do always want to cut out the channels for your speed control and your servos. So as you can see, I have my servo here. One of them is just the regular length lead. The other one is doubled to get a little bit more range because it's going to be on the opposite end of the wing versus the receiver. So what I'll do here is I'll go ahead and just kind of dry fit them, place them into place, or actually put them into place here. And then we'll take our blade and just run your channel. And you can just kind of score the top. You don't have to go anything too deep or anything like that. We're just kind of scoring it so we can put our receiver in here. So as you can see, I scored that side, and now I'm running in my channel. You could do this if you want to prior to painting it. That way you don't see, you know, any gaps, but I usually don't. Some people like to stick their servo wires in there and then tape off the actual servo and paint the wires too. With these, I find them that they're, you know, very inexpensive. So if I need to build another one, I need to build another one, and I don't want to spend too much time. I actually want to spend more time flying than building. So once you run your servo channels, kind of place your ESC where it's going to go. Mine's going to go right here, so I'll probably double up this channel and then just kind of go along with the servo on the left side, and then I'll go ahead and we'll get into laminate. Actually, what you can do also too is dry fit all your equipment, your FPV equipment. You can put your video gear here, you can put your camera, and just kind of figure out where all your wires and everything are gonna go. That way you can cut out less of the laminate and actually into the foam. So when you laminate down on this, you can get everything in there. So I'm going to go ahead and get all my wires, everything kind of dry fitted in there, and then we'll get into the laminate. We'll get into the first step before the laminate.